everyone, and welcome to the LTH product briefing. I'm delighted today to be joined by Joe Rayment, the CEO and founder of Cicero, an intriguing product all the way from Australia. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Nikki. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great having you on, and I'm thrilled to be able to introduce this product to a broader global audience. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about Cicero, the background, and what this product does?
Absolutely. I founded Automatise, the company behind Cicero, 2 years ago, and for 18 months we worked exclusively with one client, just getting a use case that was grounded in practicality. We made a couple of design decisions early on that at the time seemed perhaps controversial, but today we believe that it's been very much ratified by how AI has evolved over time. One of those design decisions was that we did not want to take on any tasks that actually required a law degree. Instead, we focused on tasks that were analogous to what a paralegal would perform and do in support of lawyers, and what lawyers do when there are no paralegals to assist them. So that aligns to document review and analysis. So we focus on 5 use cases. We use AI and a number of other related technologies to actually split documents and perform pre-processing of documentation using delimitation. We will then categorize those documents in line with default document management protocols. We'll summarize documents and then use AI to assist in investigations of matters of fact. Note that these are not legal analyses that require complex reasoning. This is fact-finding over very large document volumes. We also then can create chronologies using AI, and there's a number of unique aspects to how we do that. A final use case is that we can extract info from uniform documents. Think contracts or certificates of capacity, anything where you can extract the same types of templated bits of information from a document and present it back in a tabular format.
That's excellent. It's interesting, the philosophy to make sure that you're focusing this cutting edge technology where the lawyer would seek assistance in any case, rather than where the lawyer themselves typically operates.
The hope was to give time back to lawyers to do what they're uniquely qualified to do, and we like to think we've done that.
I love it. Let's jump in and take a look at the product.
Fantastic. One of the very first things you're greeted with when you jump into Cicero is an indication of how much work Cicero has done for you. One of the biggest problems that we see in the adoption of generative AI for law firms is not necessarily hallucinations or getting the use cases. It's what happens if the mission is successful. What happens if you can actually reduce 40% of the amount of time it takes to perform, to do the work required to achieve an outcome for your client, especially in a market that's heavily saturated with billable hours, where you're actually charging for the amount of time spent on a particular task. Our view here is that a lawyer with generative AI, their time is potentially more valuable than a lawyer who doesn't use generative AI, and it's not necessarily a fair scenario to penalize the law firm for becoming more efficient in how they achieve their work. One of the things that we do here is we meter how much AI has contributed to a matter in the form of AI units. One AI unit is roughly equivalent to 18,000 words processed in a transaction. And the idea here is that a firm can take that unit and potentially use it as an internal calculus for an alternative fee agreement, or in some instances, we've actually seen some firms pass that on as a disbursement, very analogous to how e-discovery platforms might charge hosting fees to clients directly as part of litigation budgets. And the idea here is that AI can be used to share the value with the clients and firms equally, as opposed to simply passing it on and potentially receiving devastating commercial outcomes, or alternatively, not having a vehicle to actually meter how much AI was used, or perhaps incorporating into hourly rates, which might seem tremendously inflated compared to what life was like before the adoption of AI. It's certainly not a mandate, but we like to give a blueprint for how this might be done.
The fact that you're giving a blueprint is so admirable, because I think a lot of people are skipping over this part or not yet daring to go there. Just for everyone watching, the great thing here is that AI unit is showcased throughout the platform. Is that right, Joe? As well as the amount of time it would have taken a human. So you can always see as a user the benefit you're getting from the platform. So even beyond the cost savings or the hourly savings, you're also proving value to the user as they leverage the platform, which I think is really interesting.
Absolutely, Nikki. So in addition to showing you at the outset, at every step of the platform, when you perform a transaction, it'll tell you how much it would have taken and how much time it would have taken and how many units are associated with it. And at any given stage, you can actually see how much time has been spent on a per matter, per case basis. It even goes so far as to produce narrations as to what work has been done on behalf of the user. That's again a generative AI task. The intention being that this can be exported at any given stage and reviewed by a partner or another person tasked with establishing the value that AI has been providing, and then work out what might might be considered a billable or non-billable task.
And Joe, just to ward off any comments we're almost certainly going to get on this, how did you calculate the I unit?
So a lawyer can read 300 words a minute or 18,000 words an hour. So if you have on ingest, when we summarize a document, if it's got 36,000 words, we can easily say, just by counting the word count, that this would be equating to 2 AI units. Similarly, if you're producing a chronology with that same document, that's another 2 AI units. And if you're performing an investigation of a matter of fact, we take the reactive pages, that is the pages that have been deemed semantically similar to the question that's being asked, and we'll only count the number of pages. So if there's only 10 pages that are relevant, we'll only count the work on those individual pages as opposed to the entire document.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. All right, let's see the rest of the functionality here.
Okay, so first and foremost, all work is being metered on a per client and per matter basis. So by adding your clients and or client codes, you've got the ability to segregate and partition the data that you're adding to the platform. By selecting a matter, you can then import documents. I'll just swap over to my other environment for a second where we've got the integration up and running. You can either import data locally or via Manage. We are actively working on a net documents and relativity connector as well. But at the moment, if I was to choose iManage, I can do a once-off import by selecting my client, selecting my data folder, and I'm then greeted with the file structure inside iManage. Now I can choose either a folder or a nested folder and then choose to import it into Cicero against the document that I've selected here, against the matter that I've created. And you'll see that these are now in the queue. And now that will be import, and it's actually already completed. Now, the other thing that we can do here from a local import, and we're hoping to add this to iManage very soon, is the ability to split documents using AI to automatically delimit documentation. We've worked with a lot of insurance firms where information is shared from clients, often in the form of a single bundle with potentially thousands of pages. I was once a paralegal. That was my foray into the legal profession when I was studying law. And one of the things that drove me from the profession was having to unbundle documents manually. And so it was with great joy I can come back and provide a solution that will allow the next generation to not have to do this.
Can you briefly explain the problem with the bundled documents and splitting them?
Absolutely. Data is commonly shared from clients to firms in the form of a bundle. You might have potentially 1,200 pages in a single file, when in reality is that there's actually 439 component documents that make up that one particular file. Now, if you're looking to use AI to summarize documents, to produce chronologies, to extract information from uniform documents, having a single bundle is next to useless. So if you're looking to extract dates that a patient visited a doctor and you've got a single field to extract, if you don't have the individual medical reports or the certificates of capacity you neatly delimited, it's going to become a bit of a hogwash when you try and attempt to extract information from those documents. So by using AI in the first place to pre-process the information, I'll take you through the platform as to how it neatly summarizes the outputs, even from this particular file alone. But we strongly believe that this pre-processing step is essential in getting the most value from your generative AI tool, and that functionality is largely underpinned by this admittedly obscure, but at the same time, really useful feature.
That's great.
So if I were to just click on next here, you'll actually see the natural boundary between document 1 and document 2. So we use 3 different types of technology to work out these boundaries. We start by simply unpicking bookmarks, but we extend this to looking at the numbering system using a classical transformer in both the header and the footer to work out when page references reset. And you'll be able to see that this is actually the second document. And we also use generative AI to assist in detecting semantic differences and topic changes between document sets as well. Now, let's say AI didn't quite get this right, and I actually want to set the boundary here instead of here. I can very quickly just click on where I'd like to, on that snipping arrow, and set it over here. And all of a sudden, I've adjusted the suggestion that AI has come up with around where to delimit. And if I were to press split, I'll now see AI has actually worked out the appropriate name for each of the various different documents, either using the information that was captured inside the bookmarks or using Gen AI, as in this section here, to work out an appropriate naming convention for the document that we've extracted. So that's an underpinning linchpin of Cicero. If I just go back to my other environment where I've got a matter prepared for us, if I click on new task, you'll actually see each individual document has been given a 50 to 100 word summary. And this is, again, something that's become exponentially more valuable given that we've now split our documents into its component parts. Across each document, I've extracted the most relevant date applicable to that document. The default in Australia is using our Australian Federal Court default document management protocol, but this is entirely customizable on a per matter basis. So you can use any management protocol that you'd like to, including building a custom one for a larger litigation matter. You've also got that 50 to 100 word summary. And if I'm going to click on that document, it will produce a 250 to 500 word summary, depending on the complexity of the information. Now, this is not meant to act as a replacement for lawyers reading documents. Absolutely, it's not our intention, but the intention here is to reduce the amount of time it takes to get familiar with your matter by helping you identify the documents that might be more or less relevant to the questions that you're looking to answer. If you couple this with a Boolean search term, as we do up the top, so if I'm going to just type in a couple of keywords, I can now reduce the size of the haystack, the proverbial haystack that I'm going to search for some needles in, by just adding in a couple of key terms. One thing I'll just talk to here is that we spent a great deal of time building this out to support not just smaller matters, but large litigation. We've built Cicero to be able to query literally hundreds of thousands of files, which we think is a real great distinguishing feature. There's the upper limit, if we had to put one on it, is in excess of 5 documents that we can feed through advanced RAG capabilities. And we feel that this extends out the use case for Cicero from matters that might end up being mediated and disputes that will never make it to court, all the way up to large scale litigation where heavy document review platforms would be required to be involved. And we can trigger that through, just jumping back into my other environment here that's a little bit faster. I can specify I'd like to create a new task. And from this task, I'm prompted with the option of running either an investigation or a chronology. When it comes to investigations, this is not ask any question and get a magic answer. We emphasize that you can ask questions in much the same way you might ask a paralegal to find information. If you're looking for complex legal analysis, Cicero today is not the right tool for you. If, however, you're looking to establish, did person A know about event B before X, Y, and Z date, Cicero is fantastically powerful at fact finding and determining the relevant documents to your query. Examples might be, when did so-and-so attend a particular prison or detention facility? When was the last time patient X was found to have used intravenous drugs? These are complex questions that often involve many dates across a great volume of data. Cicero is extremely good at answering based off some of the capabilities I'll take you through in just a moment. This is an Australian government investigation into a premier, this particular matter, a leader of one of our state governments. And I'm going to ask a question just to demonstrate its ability to find a needle in a haystack. I'm going to ask, did Darryl McGuire have a set of Gladys Berejiklian's house keys? This particular man was in a relationship with the Premier at the time that was undisclosed. And a great big part of this hearing was about the nature of that relationship, and having keys or not having keys could go a long way to understanding what that relationship might involve and how it was formed. I'm going to ask also a second question that's a bit more open-ended, just to give you an example of the type of questions that Cicero can answer. We'll go, what disclosure did anyone in government become aware of the nature? And now, this is a bit of a meaty question. I don't like how I phrased it, so I'm going to press validate. We recognize that some lawyers take to prompting like a duck to water and are really good at it, but others might have a bit of a challenge getting their head around how it might work. And so we built this validation feature with the intention of, if it's not quite a demo if something doesn't go right. There we go. Now we've built this feature here to help attempt to guide a lawyer, and it's in getting the most out of their prompts. So it's addressing a series of criteria to see if the question is any good and if it's likely to give a good answer, and it'll recommend a potential better read of the question if it doesn't quite meet that criteria.
That's the prompt guidance effectively within the solution.
Exactly. And now, one other thing that I really like about this is that if you've asked a question that's a bit very broad and general and doesn't really give you an idea as to what you're looking to get an answer to, it will actually read the synopses of the documents in order to suggest a potentially better question. So it's going to be aware of the information that you're feeding it in suggesting information. So I'm going to accept that question, and I'm going to press generate answer. We'll call this LTH demo. You can ask up to 10 questions. We found that some lawyers will attempt to ask many questions inside the one tab, and that potentially results in many weak answers. By keeping it focused, we've seen much better responses. So I'm pressing generate answer now. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that it's going to give us while it's thinking, I'll explain what's going on in the background. You might remember a couple of months ago, Google got a bit of egg on its face when it started suggesting answers to search queries entered into the platform. One such example was, how many rocks should you eat in a day? And Google quite confidently answered that leading geologists recommend eating 5 rocks a day. Now, it was terrible health advice, and the reason it was so confident its response, because it found literally only one document that would answer its question, and that was from The Onion, a satirical newspaper. Now, to avoid similar pitfalls, we don't just search one query. We've found that there are 103 reactive pages across 30 documents, and we've fed every single one of those pages into an LLM to provide us a summary and also a relevance score against the original question. And so of the 1,600 suggested pages, we determined that 103 were reactive, and it's made 103 different calls in the background just to answer this one question, having deemed that there were only 2 relevant pages to the response. But it's at the same time, it's got the full history of all the other pages that were potentially reactive. It's answered the question, and now it's answered in a very particular way that I just want to draw attention to one fact here. It answers the question using couching its language in a layer of uncertainty and specifying that it's based off the documents in the review batch that it's assessed, that I fed it, meaning that the answer is not necessarily definitive, but it's based off the available information that it was able to process.
And then I see that it directs the user towards sources, so the direct sources from which this answer is drawn are accessible and
Absolutely
reviewed. This, as a former litigator, I can imagine this would feel like a superpower, being able to interrogate documents like this.
Absolutely. The feedback we've had from litigators has been that it's a game changer for them. We've even gone so far as to introduce highlighting the actual text where that particular assertion can be found. Now, I do want to be completely honest here. It's not perfect. AI doesn't have the same contextual understanding that a human does. It can potentially, if you asked it to provide an argument to say that Ms. Berejiklian was not, in fact, corrupt, or that she was, or help me find information that shows that, to provide an argument against the assertions made by the prosecution, it would potentially look at her testimony and saying, I'm not corrupt. Now, it wouldn't know to weight that with the same level of gravity that's text messages between just concrete evidence effectively. So it does need to be taken through the lens of understanding that this is not a thinking, reasoning machine. This is helping us identify documents that potentially contain the answers, and it's providing a first pass of a question, not for you to copy and paste, trust it implicitly, but to be able to check the underlying documentation in much the same way we're doing now. The other thing I wanted to show you here is in the second document, the second question we had, this is a bit more nuanced. It's a bit more open-ended. And we found that there were 615 reactive pages, of which 233 were deemed relevant. Now, you'll notice here that it's processing it in B1 and B2. What it's done here is it's actually processing the documents in batches of 250. There are some quirks to how large language models work. There's a phenomenon called lost in the middle effect. If you try and feed too much information into a large language model, it will pay attention to what's at the beginning and what's at the end, but not what's in the middle. So we've broken it up into review batches, to one for speed needs, and the second is for accuracy. We found that the responses become far more accurate if you divide and conquer the amount of information that you're feeding in LLM. So what the analogy I really like to draw here, and I'm perhaps betraying my age a bit, but in the mid-2000s, when I was a paralegal, I worked in file rooms. When I worked in a team with other paralegals, and we were each given boxes of files to trawl through to see if there was information that addressed specific questions that the fee earners who were running the case were interested in. And so we'd each take a box and we'd comb through all of the material, and we'd reconvene in a week, and we'd say, this is my summary based off the information that I was given to review. And that's very similar to what these review batches are doing here. So it's still processing the second review batch. There we go, it's now done. And so what's happening here is that it's providing an information based on the source documents in this review batch. And these are the 9 documents that are relating to batch 1. These are the 27 documents relating to batch 2, and batch 3 is almost complete, running at the moment. And we can see over time we're having less and less relevant information per review batch, because this has been ordered in a way where we found the most reactive documents first, and eventually it'll keep running until it runs out of relevant documents to present an information to. Once this process is done, you can actually have a combined run where you've taken all of the relevant documents and synthesized into a single particular run. But we found that reviewing the individual batches it opens up use cases in very large litigation when you're dealing with potentially hundreds of thousands of documents. And it's a really effective way of getting answers. Just in the time we've been talking here, it ran across question 1 and question 2 over 700 AI calls or conversations that you might have had with ChatGPT just to answer these 2 questions. And we really feel that this is only possible by using the privately hosted AI platform that we've got. The cost would have been astronomically expensive if we were paying per token for these these particular outcomes. So we think we've done something quite innovative here.
That would be remarkably useful. That's fantastic. And what about chronologies, Joe?
Thanks, Nikki. Good segue. So chronologies are bring up another matter that was quite popular in Australia for a while. I won't run a chronology live because these do take a bit of time to run. It's not an instantaneous outcome, but I'll show you a one that I ran a bit earlier. Now, I'm of two minds of using this particular example because it's over the top of an affidavit, and affidavits are extraordinarily clean and well formatted compared to the vast majority of information you would be reviewing in discovery. That being said, though, it's next to impossible to produce synthetic data similar to what a real life case would run with. So unfortunately, we're limited to what's in the public domain. So what's happened here is it's actually a fairly common use case, and I know a lot of firms have built these solutions themselves because it's not too hard to actually build a chronology in the first instance where you take and serialize each of the events that occur inside a particular page and then dump them into a table for them to then format with the date and the details. Where it becomes really tricky is threefold. The very first one is if you've taken a page where the context isn't immediately clear as to who's talking, or you don't have the reference dates that are being alluded to or inferred from the text itself. An example is in page 1 of an affidavit, you've introduced yourself, you've stated you were born on a particular date, and then on page 2, you are no longer feel the need to reference your name anymore, and you're starting to talk in terms of when you were 17, when you were 21, when you were 27, but you haven't felt the need to restate your date of birth. We've gone through a very lengthy and painful process of what's called contextual retrieval, where we enrich each of those particular pages with reference points from within the entire document. Again, we feel this is something that wouldn't be feasible unless we owned our own AI, given the sheer volume of the amount of AI workloads involved. But it means that you can see at the very beginning, it understands that a fellow called Bruce Lehrman is talking. And if I continue all the way through the platform, it doesn't revert to talking about the affiant or the defendant or the author. It recognizes that it's Bruce Lehrman talking and as the actor the entire way through, which is something that took us a very long time to get right. Another one of the really key distinguishing features of our chronology is that we found that AI, this is going to be a bit of a shock for people listening as an AI founder admitting this, but AI is not accurate. We found that the accuracy rate was about 97% when it comes to being able to produce chronologies as accurate reflections of the data that was being passed through. Now, that sounds like it's pretty good, except when you don't know which 3% is suspect. So we have effectively solved this problem. We believe we have through a resource-intensive process called peer review. We spend 50 times as much AI consumption or compute actually reviewing the outputs of the chronology by virtue of passing through an investigation across each and every row to understand if there's any evidence inside the corpus that will corroborate this particular event and make sure that AI has understood the context in which the information was presented. For instance, if I look at the second row, it'll say that this particular row is potentially misdated. It's said that Bruce Lehrman moves to Queensland for school in year 6. It's inferred the year 2006. And if I were to click on that statement there, I just go pages 1 to 2, we can see from the actual source text itself that it doesn't mention that 2006 at all. And that if you're going to rely on that particular row, this is indicated that you should view it with a level of suspicion and double check it yourself before you do.
That's very helpful. So essentially, you get alerts on what portions of the chronology require further review.
Absolutely. Yeah. There we go. It mentions, as you can see here, it says stayed until year 6. Now, there's an assumption here that given he was born in 1995, that he was 11 in the time of year 6, but it's not necessarily something you can rely on without double checking it. So we place into 4 categories: verified, ambiguous, misdated, and unsubstantiated. And we found that we can whittle out as much as half of a chronology. The third and final problem that we have is information overload. When our AI produces a chronology, we don't make the assumption that it knows what's relevant versus what's not relevant through the course of a matter, and we leave a human in the loop to help make that determination. At the same time, there's a lot of information. Much of it might be irrelevant to the matter at hand. So what we do is we actually categorize each and every one of the rows using a series of tags that can be actually updated and amended in the background. So if you just wanted to see the medical history, for instance, we can see his suicidal thoughts, admittance to Royal North Shore Hospital, and psychiatric rehabilitation programs. And similarly, we can also search for specific events and queries if we wanted to. Final note, the way we anticipate this to be used is for a lawyer to review it, to highlight the rows that they believe are relevant and filter out the rest, and looking at a subset of the information with the intention of our advice is if you're going to rely on it, verify it. But at the same time, though, it gives you very early on the vibe of your case. It helps you potentially run your case in a different way than you might have if you didn't have access to a tool like this. because it helps you immediately see what things that might obviously change the strategy that you would employ if you didn't have such a tool. That's our chronology investigation, Nikki. I'm conscious there's one more feature I wanted to show. So this is using synthetic data. This is not real information. We'll do it from here. Information extraction. This is our ability to extract information from uniform documents using set templates, some of which are prefabricated, others of which the firm can build for themselves. This allows you to extract data points from documents. This can be used in due diligence, in extracting information from contracts. It can also be used in litigation. In this particular instance, this is a template that we worked with an insurance client, an insurance defense firm, for slip and falls. So we're extracting information from expert medical reports, trying to understand how many are presenting information favorable to their client's position versus unfavorable. Now, one of the key distinguishing features here is that we can actually set flag conditions so that if the likelihood for return to work is low, we can say that's actually a red flag. Or if it's high, it might be a green flag. And we can set custom flags for various different conditions and use natural language to extrapolate what sort of information we'd like. If I press generate answer here, you'll actually be able to see on a per question basis the proportion of questions that have shown green flags versus red flags. And if I were to click on a document, you can actually see the answers to some of those questions, as well as the data points that we extracted in short form text format. Now, one important thing to note here is that there's a flag to talk to how many of these documents have been reviewed by a human. We are inherently skeptical that AI gets it right, and we will let you know when someone hasn't said, yes, this is correct. So when you're exporting this to Excel to look at in different formats, we'll indicate as to whether a human has eyeballed the particular answer and confirmed, yes, this matches our understanding and I has completely got it accurate, or indicated that actually, no, this is an incomplete answer.
But are you able here to click on each data point and go back to the original document and easily verify through the system whether or not it does have it correct, such that you can effectively do, as you say, if it was on the transactional side, a due diligence review here?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have the ability to, it provides citations, and clicking on those citations will take you through to the documents themselves where you've, in a reading pane format, very similar to what we saw in the chronology and investigation formats.
That's fantastic. Joe, thank you so much. There is so much that is possible with this system, and I can really imagine it being effectively a workspace from which people run their litigations. Thank you for showing us. If people want to learn more, where should they go for more information?
Forgive the Australian spelling here. I appreciate that this sounds different in the US. The company's name is Automatise, Automatise. We're going to get a version with a Z as well one day, but .com. And there's more information on our website where you can also request a demo.
Thank you so much for being with us, Joe. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.